So we're just going to now look at responsive breastfeeding and early relationships. So when should you feed your baby? How long should you feed your baby? When's the right time to feed your baby? Well, what we recommend is that you do something called responsive breastfeeding, and it can be a really wonderful experience for both you and your baby. It's a reciprocal feeding relationship. It's something that works for both of you. But what does it mean? Well, it means that really you want to be responsive to your baby. So if your baby's telling you that they're hungry, you respond to them and you feed them in line with their signs and their cues that they're hungry. And you would do that. It's kind of what we've always called feeding on demand. You know, we continue to say, feed to your baby's cues. Put simply, it's your baby's body language. It's when they're telling you, I'm starting to get hungry, Mum. I'd quite like a feed. So responding to them early, not allowing them to get to the point where they're crying for feeding, really kind of trying to spot the signs early on so that they don't have opportunity to become really distressed. And also in the earlier days, that makes it for a much calmer feeding experience for both of you. And also while you're learning, it makes it easier to latch your baby to the breast. So let's just have a little look at what the cues look like. We've got some early cues and some mid cues for you here. So early cues are, I'm hungry. This is body language to say I'm hungry. You often just get stirring in the cot, baby's waking up. Just thinking about, you know, becoming more alert. You might start to notice that opening and closing their mouth a little bit. They might be turning their head. They might be seeking something out to suck on, their fingers, their sheet, their arm. If you pick them up, they might root on you, you know, and have a little go at trying to latch to your face or your cheek or your shoulder. So they're nice early cues that your baby is waking for food. Your middle cues are a little bit more obvious. You might get more increased physical movement. You might get more hand to mouth action, actively trying to suck on something, particularly fingers. You get lots of stretching. You might get a bit more noises from your baby, maybe some grunting, and just some signs that, you know, they're kind of really getting hungry now. So this is more than I'm hungry. This is, I'm really hungry, Mum. I'm ready for a feed. So observing for these feeding cues is going to be really useful for you. So the next part of responsive breastfeeding is really a little bit more than demand feeding. So that's part of it, is feeding to your baby's demand. But the other part of this is really meeting their other needs and also meeting your needs in feeding as well. So this is where you both have the opportunity to be happy with breastfeeding and making it work for both of you. Okay, so you can basically offer a feed anytime where it feels right for you and your baby. There's never a wrong time to offer a breastfeed. It could be that you offer feeds for your needs or your baby's needs, and that might be that you feed for nutrition. So like we've mentioned in response to the feeding cues, it could be that you're feeding for comfort, because you or your baby needs to feel comforted by the feelings that you get when you breastfeed. For mums, it could be that it actually feels quite nice to just sit, cuddle your baby and have a feed and forget about the housework and forget about the cleaning, forget about the fact that you feel tired. You're just going to sit there and enjoy that time together. When you breastfeed, you are flooded with oxytocin. So oxytocin is this happy hormone, the hormone that brings on the feeling of calm. So it could be that you do experience that when you breastfeed. It also makes you feel very in love with your baby. So you might actually seek out breastfeeds because you just adore your baby. And that's absolutely fine too. So feeding for comfort and love is part of responsive breastfeeding. It might be that you need to feed for convenience. So you need to feed because you need to feed. It could be that you're going out. It could be that you've got visitors coming around and you'd rather feed before or after. So you can instigate that feeding because it suits your day. It suits your needs at that moment. It could be that you feed to settle your baby. Maybe your baby's feeling a bit grizzly today. They're having one of those days. It's hard to settle them. But you know that if you offer them a feed, they probably will. And you can feed to soothe, because obviously things happen. Babies have tests, they get weighed, they have injections, there's lots of things going on with them, and it could be that actually when they're crying after they've had that done, that breastfeeding will help calm them down and make them feel better. It could be when they're older, they're teething, and you can tell that they're uncomfortable, and offering a feed gives them that soothing relief that they need. So you can never overfeed your breastfed baby. It is impossible. And you cannot make a breastfed baby feed if they don't want to. And it is just physically impossible to overfeed. And breastfeeding can therefore be part of your mothering. It could be part of the way that you and your baby work together in your relationship. And it actually can be really empowering for you to know that you've got this thing that you can do that basically just sorts your baby out no matter what. So that, you can get plenty out of breastfeeding too. It is not just about your baby's nutrition. This is a quote from a second-time mum who completely embraced responsive breastfeeding the second time round. And what she said about responsive breastfeeding is that if you feed your baby for comfort, the nutrition is just going to take care of itself. Don't have to worry about it, because your baby will feed so much for just being with you and comfort and to make themselves feel better. They're going to get more than enough milk during that time. And it's a great approach for you, really. It helps remove a lot of the worry about nutrition and is my baby getting enough milk, and it brings lots of benefits for you and your baby. So we talk about responsive breastfeeding, we talk about responsive feeding and being responsive, because it has a huge benefit for your baby's development. It helps with their brain development under the influence of oxytocin. It's basically helping to grow their brain, but in a way where they feel safe and secure. Just have a little look at what I mean. So baby's brain development actually starts with them in your tummy. So now, whilst you're pregnant, your baby is developing their brain, and there's lots of things you can do in pregnancy to help this process. So things like talking to your baby, stroking your bump, taking time out in the day to perhaps lie down and have a think about your baby. Bring on that rush of oxytocin that will flood your baby's brain while they're in your tummy, and it basically cements their neurons and their synapses under the positive influence of oxytocin. But babies are born with billions of brain cells, billions of neurons. So many neurons, there's just the most neurons that you can ever measure, really. We're talking like billions, but they're not connected to each other yet. That's what happens once they're born. And those connections are what you can influence, basically. So how your baby grows their brain is something that you can help with. And they build these connections every time they have a positive interaction or every time they have a negative interaction. Something happens to them, they learn and they build a synapse. And the more times they experience that, the stronger those synapses get. So the more they experience positive experiences, things like being talked to, sung to, touched, stroked, rocked, fed, responded to, soothed, they build and strengthen those positive synapses, those positive connections between brain cells. When things happen, if they're left to cry for long times, if they're not responded to, if they're not picked up and nurtured, they will build synapses for those negative experiences. And so you're building the foundations of your baby's brain, and that basically sets them up for their future. This is just a really nice image just to show you kind of how quickly your babies build their brains. So the synapses aren't there at birth, and they grow at a really rapid rate in the first, well, actually it's the first 5 years, but certainly you can see how quickly they grow here. It's quite an amazing image, actually. So what we're talking about really is a 4th trimester. So obviously you have your 3 trimesters with them inside you, and then they're born, and that period of time where they're learning their new environment and getting to know you and getting to know their life, that's their 4th trimester. And they're still developing, and by providing a safe, secure environment and being responded to by you and by your partner and by the people around them, then it helps them to build their brain with secure attachments. They learn that you're always there, and they learn that you're not going away, and they actually become really confident children. We have disproven, we're unlearning what we thought about them. It's not possible to spoil your baby. They cannot vie for your attention. They aren't being naughty. They're not neurologically capable of that yet. So right now they're acting on instinct. They're crying for you because they need you. And if they need you, they want you to respond to them. And if you respond to them, you flood them with oxytocin and you set those secure attachments and they become strong. So it's just absolutely not possible to spoil your baby with too much love.